Evening all. How are we? Very important week here in FPL world. Some of you are on wildcards. Some of you are wondering what the hell to do. Fortunately, you don't need to worry about getting good advice. Move aside Danny, move aside me. We'll be going straight to FPL Harry, who is our guest this evening. How are you, Harry?
I'm doing very good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Although I have to say, my decision making over the past couple of weeks might not be the best time to be taking advice from me. But I'm sure we'll talk about that. But no, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I have to say I resisted this tempt. I saw your tweet actually quite recently where it was quite amusing. Where I think you're often accused of being one of the luckiest managers, aren't you? And it was like I have won, but at what cost?
Yeah. But people finally said that I'd been unlucky over the past few weeks, and I was like, I don't know how to react to this.
That must have been very gratifying. I'll let the chat kind of gather for a few minutes. Interestingly enough, we've been talking for about 10 minutes before we came live on air, talking mainly about baked potatoes. Danny, actually, no, Danny, your dinner is probably after the show for you, but for Harry, he's going to be in and out, making sure that jacket potato is properly crispy, getting everything ready. So if you have tips for jacket potato toppings, let's not waste our time on FPL. Please do populate the chat with all your suggestions. I've already told Harry about my suggestion of smoky chili on top of beans. Goes a long way, but very good. How are you doing yourself, Danny, this evening?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Yeah, it's nice to have Harry on. I can't say that I would enjoy his any of his bad luck, but I've not been able to enjoy anyone's bad luck because I've had pretty much exactly the same time as Harry. I think we were both around about 50 or 60k, and now we're both around about 160k or something, 150 or something. So probably had pretty similar weeks. It's been a bit dismal. But yeah, what can you do? All you can do is look forward. Loads of the season left. Hope to get lucky. So yeah, tonight will be a nice little bit of a refresh actually, and just start thinking about FPL again.
Actually, do you know, I'm going to give you a chance to plug, actually, Harry, because I know that you've just started a new kind of video series or approach this week. Do you want to just let us know? Because
I spend my life talking about FPL, and I thought I should spend even more time doing it because there isn't enough of me talking about this game. But yeah, I spend a lot of time sort of doing what's my team and what I think fits all, but I try to do a little bit more. I love like podcasts and stuff when I get to come on them, and the ones I do sort of on a weekly basis, because it's quite nice to just talk a bit more freely rather than, specifically trying to answer what's needed for every week. So I added an extra video on a Tuesday morning, which is called a game week preview, but it's basically just my opportunity to discuss in a bit more broader sense what people want to, which feels like there's a lot of at the moment, and all of it seems to be the issues that I've also got in my team, which makes me feel really great. But yeah, no, it's good.
I'm going to pick you up on one thing though. I watched your preview earlier. I think it was this morning when I was looking into it, and you said at one point, I've been trying to cut this down from about 30 minutes to more like a 20 because that's far too long. There's no way I could watch anything that long. I was like, oh my god, when he turns up here later, it's going to be like we've been working really hard to hit 2-hour deadlines.
Yeah, it's different though, right? Because when you do like a video like that, that's got it's more focused. If I did 2 hours of that with like everything up on screen, it would take me an awful long time to do, and it would be a lot. Whereas when you've got it like this and it's just people chatting, then I listen to podcasts more than I watch YouTube, and I listen to an hour, 2 hour podcasts every day on FPL. So it's different. It's different.
No. I was going to say our intros are 30 minutes. We haven't
I've confirmed to best behavior, no jazz references tonight. I'm just going to say hello to a few people in the chat. Actually, some mutual friends out there. Alon, I have to talk about Alon. He says, "What's up, Danny, Richie, and hello to Harry." Actually, do check out FPL this week because I think Harry and I were talking about it before we came on. I think they have something like a 55 points between them, or something like that this week. I might be wrong about that, but I know 12.5 million game week ranks, that sort of thing, despite being good teams. So it just goes to show it's a tricky, tough time out there. And if you're hitting 20 odd points this week, it's not unusual. It's just the way that it is. People were shocked that we're on time, Danny. So on time, what the hell? That's cheers. Thanks. Don't embarrass us in front of Harry. He's professional. But,
that was me saying we need a hard finish at 8 because I need to go and watch Chelsea play. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was. And also, at least you gave us warning as well. Like, I was on a walk and I did have to skip a little bit and start walking a bit faster. But it is incredible for me to be on time for anything, to be honest. So, but I'm learning. I'm getting better.
Confirmation. One of our regulars, Heather, I'm late because you're actually on time. But yeah, welcome, Il. And we've had a tip, by the way, if you're interested in jacket potato toppings again. Sour cream and chives. I haven't tried that one. Chives, I'm not big on, I have to be honest with you. I don't know.
I'm not a sour cream and chive, like crisp type of person. Like, I'm not a cheese and onion. I don't like sour cream and chive. So I'll probably take your word at it and stick to my cheese and beans, I think.
Yeah. Cheesy beans. Can't go wrong with that, can you? That sounds pretty good to me.
It has to be cheese, beans, and tuna mayo, by the way. It does need to be all three with a little bit of, maybe even like a little bit of grated fried onion on top.
Blimey. Okay. All right, chef. Well, okay. Yeah. Well, next time.
Some of us are not rustling that up every night.
Someone will do it for me.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to the slide this week. The theme this week, crossroads. It is a tricky one, isn't it? Because I mean, actually, Harry, I don't know whether we talked about this before, but I mean, how close were you to kind of hitting any kind of wild card buttons this week? Because we'll talk about it a bit later on. But for a lot of people, this is a crossroads because I don't know about you. I'd planned to have kind of 4 transfers this week and to do a lot with it, and never ended up having them.
I actually think, like, as much as I look at my team, and I posted it a couple of times on Twitter, and half of the people seem to think that it's a perfectly good team that I should roll, and the other half think I should wildcard, which is a really interesting place to be in at the moment. I think that I would love to have a wildcard, and there would be 6, 7, 8, 9 changes that I'd probably make on it, but I don't plan on playing it. And I think the later wildcard for the doubles is just so much more important than the changes I'd make now. And like, yes, the team on a wild card looks better than my team now, but also there's a lot of picks on it that I think that they're great for now, but they're not long-term picks that I particularly want. And in 4 or 5 weeks time, they could be completely different again. I don't want to wild card into a team that I don't actually trust for the long term that much, which I feel like is some of the wild card picks at the moment. And I just think later on, it's so much more important.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree. Although we will talk wildcards, so don't worry. We're not going to besmirch you, any of you in the chat who are going down that route. Perfectly fine. Good chance to revive your season, etc. And actually, it's interesting the players you've chosen on the slide there, Danny. Enzo, for obvious reasons, being a bit of a watershed week for him, and Cunha, he is a god. Now there was a guy, Harry, just for your benefit, last week, one of our, I think he's number 2 in our mini league. We'll come to him in a minute. But Benji Yag in the chat was, who's one of our, really good players this season. He was having a go at Cunha, and Danny wasn't having any of it. So I know you're enjoying that goal last week, Danny.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't surprise me. He's a god. He does what he wants. He can do anything. So yeah, I was looking. I had to put him on there just for that. Hopefully we'll talk about the United game at some point because that was amazing, wasn't it? I was trying to find that celebration. There's not enough pictures of it yet, so I couldn't. But I think that was the goal. Maybe it was anyway. That was before that celebration. But yeah, what a goal! I've watched it back so many times.
I bet you have. I believe you. At some point, by the way, we'll work out a suitable dare, but to get you doing a Cunha dance near the corner flag on stream, saying it seems like a fairly good idea. It's a quick shout out to our mini league. Obviously, this is closed for new entrants, but for those of you pitting your wits against the others. I think his first time, Nick S, has been top of the league there, so congratulations to him. Benji Yag knocked down to second, and we know why, Danny, because, I mean, you can't slang off Cunha and get away with it, so he's dropped down. And a return, by the way, like our erstwhile leader from previous times in the season, Zach Farnell with Farnell Score, which is still a great name. He came back with a storm. He's actually back to 7th. He's not back. He dropped down to 20 or 20 something, and he's back to 7th. So well done to him. Harry, by all means, sort out your jacket potato. I'm just going to do my jacket potatoes while you talk about the mini league. No, that's a good timing, actually. Good timing. And yeah. Oh, I see the comment now. He has told us in a separate chat, so that's very kind of him. Actually, by the way, just very quickly, the chat is getting back on board with it. So Helen knows her onions. Still loving beardy Bryan. You betcha. You know, I shared it earlier this week. The path between different things, and Bryan is the route to happiness and plenty. That's my view anyway. And Danny, I'm pretty sure you agree. We'll come to that later on. And we're just going to do a quick look at our teams from last week. Now, Harry, sorry about the choice of photo. It honestly, my hands were tied. Danny threatened me with a bread knife. But yeah, just a quick review of your week. What went right? What went wrong?
What went right? We'll start with that. I picked to play Dubravka over Verbruggen. I'm actually quite happy with that decision. That was a nice little +4 that sort of wiped out the hit that I had to take this week. So I only had one transfer, and I had Tavernier unfortunately flagged, having bought him the week before, and I had Foden, and I know I wanted Bruno. I didn't go on the Friday night. I was close to doing it. And then when Foden was benched, I basically had to free up the money. So I did Tavernier down to Dewsbury Hall, which I don't know how I feel about that actually, because if I free up some money over the next week or so, Dewsbury Hall would probably be the player that I actually end up looking to upgrade in a couple of weeks. But I think he's a fine pick. He was pretty good earlier on in the season. His data's good enough and the fixtures are there. So that was the -4. And luckily, Anderson decided to get his first attacking return of the season, alongside the other defenders in my team who also got attacking returns. Unfortunately, both of them on my bench. Again, Dorgu 8, Richard 7, which makes 50 points on my bench in the past 2 weeks. So, yeah. And then Anderson in midfield continues to be my best performing attacker without it being anywhere near the goal.
Oh God, I have to say, Harry, I really struggle. I don't know why I ever brought Elliot Anderson into my team. Just because I know what I mean by this is you know what I mean by this. I find mentally I don't quite understand how to own him and use him properly. Like I know I should leave it alone, but anyway, we'll come to that. Is that really Joachim Anderson's first attacking return? I had no idea.
He's his first attacking return of the season. I think it's his first attacking return at Fulham. I think he only got them when he was at Palace. So last year, no goals, no assists, and 23-24, 2 goals, 3 assists, but he was at Palace then. So his first ever attacking return at Fulham in the league.
Unfortunately, the one that sticks out in my head, Danny, is I'm pretty sure Joachim Anderson hit an absolute banger at Old Trafford a season or two back. Sure he did. I might be wrong about that. It might have been for Palace, as you say. Let's move on. Danny, 32. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the 1 week we do reviews on teams. That's great. But actually, I don't mind it. It does make people feel better. I'd like watching this because I didn't get 32 even. I got 28. Had to take a -4. I didn't have to take a -4, so I shouldn't say. I did in the end. Yeah, I was just in obviously a pretty horrendous situation. It's a good kind of lesson as well, actually, because this has happened a few times where I've not really been prepared enough. Like I've been too, I didn't believe that they would both get benched or rested or whatever, especially not Haaland. So I wasn't prepared enough for that. And that's, I say that before, and then you say, right, I'll learn from it next time, and really didn't. Still haven't learned from that. So it's how do I improve that? So I was taking a bit off guard, and especially someone like me in my situation, because I was going into it basically before any transfers, with what would have been a 5-3-2 that included playing Anthony Gordon, the worst player of all time, and Phil Foden. And the likes of Van Dijk and Lacroix against Chelsea, and it wasn't looking good. So I was probably always going to take one, but then when the benching news came out, it was like I still didn't need to take a hit. So my first move was Foden to Fernandes, so that was fine. As soon as I knew Foden was benched, Foden to Fernandes, sorted. So then I could have still gone 5-3-2, but I would have had no bench at all, apart from Devaney, who didn't look like he was going to play. And I would have been playing Lacroix against Chelsea, which, to be honest, I didn't mind all that much. I didn't really mind it, but it was looking at it in terms of that week and this week coming up. So it was like, if I take a hit, for example, on Njai or someone, it could have been Anderson, could have been Njai. That was pretty much the only two I was looking at in the end. But obviously that gave me a slightly better team on paper. The week just gone, it gave me a sub, and it gave me a slightly better team next week and a sub for next week. So that's quite a lot. That's quite a big difference to take a hit. And of course, the hit didn't pay off for me. We'll talk about Njai at some point, but I've owned him quite a lot this season, and he's an incredible footballer, and he is a good pick. but he can be a very frustrating pick. Like I'm never going into a game like actually believing I'm going to get anything from it. And obviously I'm going into this game this week hoping that my hit gets paid off at least. Where Lacroix did end up only getting 1 point, so Njai just had to get anything. Didn't get anything. I checked at halftime and he was on 7 DEFCON at halftime, and I thought, oh, if I just get DEFCON, I'll take that. I mean, what this is why he could be a great pick. And then I think he like stayed on 7 DEFCON. I don't think he got a single another one for the second half. But anyway, so it was just really frustrating. So I wasn't hoping for much there. Tarkowski, though, who I will talk about as well when we talk later about teams and future Wildcard, I do always sort of feel quite hopeful about him. Like I always feel like I'm going to get something. You know what I mean? So and of course he did only get a 4-pointer, but there was something. So yeah, apart from that, absolutely dismal. And obviously my highest scorer by a mile for the week was Virgil van Disney, who's been by far the worst pick that I've had on the team for the last 2 or 3 months. He's also now interesting. We should talk about him at some point.
Yeah, he is again. Yeah, patience rewarded. Do you know what, Danny? I know that it wasn't a terrific week for you because of a walk I went on Sunday, and I live 10 minutes walk from the Brentford ground. And I walked past there with my wife. We're on the way to, this is the only cultural reference I promised tonight, Danny. We were going to see a Korean film called No Other Choice. Well worth watching, by the way. And we walked past the Brentford Stadium about sort of halfway through the second half, and it was very quiet. It clearly sounded like it was not going well. And by the way, this is one for the chat to guess. I saw a Premier League footballer on my way home from work earlier walking through... near Brentford, towards where I live, and see if you can guess which player I watched. Let's just say he is a creative midfielder, and he hasn't been very creative lately. My team, see if you can guess in the chat anyway. 39 this week. I mean, actually, when that. Harry, I'm guessing you know nothing about that, but we have to kind of manage a kind of community team of 16 managers in something called SKLW, strikers, keepers, losers.
I'm in an SKLW team.
Oh, you are? Okay, fair enough. And so at deadline is an absolute nightmare, right? Because if everyone's switching their teams around, you don't quite know who's got what and what's going on with Foden, Haaland, and that sort of thing. So my decision when faced with this, because I had to do that at the same time, was that I just benched Foden for Alderete. And Alderete, by the way, Danny, you'll attest to this. For some reason, in my head, you have these stupid ideas when you're planning your future game weeks. And I was like, Alderete is genuinely, in my head, one of the most important picks in the game. Now, I know it sounds silly now, but about a month ago, I was thinking I can do so much if he's just knocking around. He can slip in here and there. And the guy has got 4 1-pointers in a row.
It's unbelievable. I honestly, I was with you. I remember.
Oh, were you? Okay.
I remember like 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. Every time I made future plans with my transfers, every time I looked at 24, and obviously they got Burnley at home. Everything had Alderete in it because I thought as well it was worth the money over like Mukiele, or was just about the same as Mukiele. And
hasn't Mukiele scored like 25 points in the same 4 weeks?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But anyway, to add to that, so the team pretty much saved by Warry Hilson, as usual. He doesn't care about your XG. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He's just good. He doesn't care. He's not frightened by Oscar Bob either. He doesn't care about that. That is just who he is. But we'll talk about him a bit later on. But yeah, he's the one that saved it, really. Him and Anderson, as in the defender kind. Oh, I suppose both of them, really. But yeah,
he needs to look at his flappy hands to deal with that one. I was not impressed when I saw the highlight of that goal as a non-Wilson owner, I have to admit.
That is true. Although, to be fair, what was it? What do you call it? De Bruggen owners, or that sort of thing, have been not lucky. Well, who knows? But they've been on the right on the right side of things.
They've had enough. Yeah,
we have had enough. But I got Mad Bob for the run, so I'm sure he's the best keeper, right, Harry, at the moment, so we can go with that. Chat, just for you, you were quite correct. Mikhail Damsgaard is the guy I saw earlier on. Honestly, the guy who looks least like a Premier League footballer, if you look in the real life, he looks like an accountant or an IT guy or whatever it is. He does not look like a footballer, but nevertheless, he knocks around in these parts as well. I guess we should get on with it properly with questions. Try and get all of the answers from Harry before the the Champions League lineups and that sort of thing, which we will keep an eye on. In fact, I'm pretty sure Harry's got about 7 screens where he is looking into it. Lots of good questions this week, so thank you very much for submitting those. You really do kind of make this what it is, mainly so that it helps me not have to plan anything, really. I just use your questions, which suits me just fine. But we're going to start with a bit of wildcard. Danny, you've knocked one up in a minute, so actually that sounds a bit dubious. Yeah, you have put a slide together for me, which we'll come to in just a second. But yeah, lots of questions like this, but I've picked FPL Fungus out on there. That's an interesting name. Best picks on Wildcard 24. Is it best to leave Arsenal midfielders or pick your poison now? So that's, whether you make a bet on Rice or Saka and that sort of thing. So we'll come to that in a minute. Chelsea worthwhile given the fixture crunch and that sort of thing. So I think it's probably best on this one, Danny, if we go straight to, well, how do you feel about it? Do you want to go to the team that you've put together to talk through?
Should we warm up with another question and then come to wildcard picks when we look at a team? I don't know. I think so. Yeah, let's just
that's
start
fine.
Else, yeah.
We'll start with midfielders.
I'm just trying to think how do you answer that question? I don't know how to answer that question without looking at a team. So let's
We'll come to that a bit later. That's fine. So we're going to start with midfielders then, because a lot of the kind of questions are knocking around this one, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how close you were, but both of you here, but Sunday night was a really difficult one because there's a lot of midfield price changes and that sort of thing. People with players like Gordon or Foden, etc., were immediately trying to work out if they've got enough information on midfielders. So I think this is a good one to start with. So a lot of desirable midfielders kicking off a good run. How important is it to jump on at the beginning of a run rather than taking your time? So I guess Enzo and Mbuemo, these are kind of players who they might be referring to there. Is it justifiable to move on picks like Szoboszlai and Elliot Anderson, even if they're still decent? So this is pretty an interesting question for me, because I mean, later on, I'll be looking at a scenario whether there's enough justification to move on someone like an Anderson for Enzo, and we'll talk about that a bit later on, or not. So we can come to that debate. But start of the run, I mean, what do you think about this, Harry? Are you a manager that's kind of like, if you missed the first week of a lovely block of fixtures, does that kind of pain you to such a point where you don't do it again? I mean, does it have to be kind of at the beginning of a lovely sort of green block for you? I mean, what's your kind of feel?
It definitely helps, right? And I think with Mbuemo, with Rodgers, I think we can put in that camp as well, despite maybe not being quite at the same level as Enzo and maybe Mbuemo. But I always want to be on them early, and if you don't go early, if you're going on them a couple of weeks late, by the time you're going a couple of weeks late, you could be going on early on someone else. So this week I've got a few midfielders who are not scoring points, and I think that's the sort of aim of the question. I've got 4 or 5 midfielders who I think are good picks, but they're not scoring points at the moment, and it's how long do I give them before jumping on someone like an Enzo or an Mbuemo this week. But I think Szoboszlai, to be honest, I know the data's been pretty high on him, but now that Salah's back, I know I would probably take your 13-pointer and run with him because he's slightly more expensive. But Anderson, I think, fits a pretty nice category, and it's pretty difficult to compare him to some of the others because he's $1 million, $2 million cheaper than a lot of the others. So I quite like him, and I know we were speaking that deciding what to do with Anderson every week is a weird feeling. You've basically got to hope that everyone has a bad week if you own Anderson. You just got to hope that all the other midfielders around him blank, and then he gets a 4 or 5-pointer, and then you feel good about it. Whereas if it's a high-scoring week and all the other midfielders are doing well and you've got Anderson, then suddenly you look at it thinking, oh, should I be moving him on? So yeah, I mean, some of those midfielders, I think Enzo and Mbuemo in particular, are very appealing. This week. And if I had more luxury transfers than I do, then I'm pretty sure I'd be buying at least one of them.
Yeah, I have to say this is quite interesting because I've seen a few other pods this week where, understandably, there's a lot of people out there who are like, I'm just going to take another week on someone like an Mbuemo, right? To see how things filter out, to see whether Cunha comes back in. There's a question later on about whether he's actually someone that we can look at now. And I find that to be really difficult because someone like, I mean, especially when you have a predetermined love for a player, and Bryan is someone that we love very, very much here. We find it difficult to resist. And the idea of missing out even on one of him it's a really hard thing to accept. So it is a difficult thing to avoid getting on at the beginning of that run. Danny, I mean, you can mention him in your answers to this if you like, but I mean, do you feel the same way? Is there a case of you need to hit the timing quite correctly for some of these picks?
Yeah, I mean, I never really think like that. I never really think that I need to hit someone at a certain point. But I guess I am, obviously we're all kind of thinking ahead and planning ahead and looking at certain picks and certain players. So like Chelsea and Man United have been in lots of our heads for a while. I mean, as a United fan, probably more for me than maybe the typical manager, because I just fully expected once any of those guys were coming in like Carrick that we would be a lot better attacking wise. And I just feel sort of confident that there's just a baseline for Man United hit now. There's I just feel like there's a really high floor for a lot of the picks. Just because I think of how we'll sort of approach the game. But I guess, to answer the question, like it's correlated really with how potentially explosive the player is, the need to get them in and when to get them in and to want them there and then. It obviously depends on the player. I mean, like you mentioned Rodgers, which is true, but Rodgers is never someone, for example, where I'm getting anxious or I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't own Rodgers. In fact, I virtually never think that, rightly or wrongly, I never think that about someone like Rodgers, who is a good pick. But I'm not fearful. I'm not shocked if he blanks in a good fixture. I'm not, that kind of thing. And then there's Enzo's a bit past that, because I think he is more of a kind of make things happen type of guy, sniffs out goals type of guy, and obviously probably penalties this weekend. Obviously, we'll get the Chelsea team news coming in soon, so I don't know if that'll tell us much anyway. But so then the next level is someone like Mbuemo, for example, where I really would like to be there and then, because it's the opportunity, it's the ceiling, the potential, and the explosiveness. So that, again, like when I was talking about my moves last week, part of that having a slightly better team this week, or having a bench player, or having at least one, is also giving me extra room to pick Enzo or Mbuemo or someone like that, where regardless of something else happening to my team or another player getting injured, because that's how much I do want to, because getting a player like that has the potential to be a lot more than just having, even an 11th player, for example. You could almost go with 10 players in a Mbuemo at home to Fulham and feel okay about it, because that's a sort of. So it depends on the player. I mean, you know what I mean. Depends on the player. So
the thing I'd say with leaving it a week, right, to pick a player and seeing how it goes this week. I've done it too much this season, and it's something I'm trying to do less, because you're then putting so much weight on the points that they get in that specific week. And so I did it earlier on in the season with Saka, that I didn't think he was worth the money. And the week that I didn't buy him, he then got 12 points. I think he scored and got DEFCON. And then suddenly I was like, well, I'm going to buy him now. And the issue with doing that is you're using 1 week of performance and 1 week of data to massively skew your decision based off what they do. And you've then missed the points. So if he'd have blanked in that game, I wouldn't have bought him, but I'm now buying him because I've missed 12 points that he's just got the week before. So as much as there are specific scenarios where giving it an extra week to see if a player's fit, to see what position they're playing in, if you know what position they're going to play in and you know that they're fit, then you may as well buy them, because I don't think that extra week of information should be weighted to the level that it will be if you give it an extra week.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I do think actually this question is probably better put through a good example. I mean, to my mind, the player that immediately springs to mind for this idea of desirable midfielders, start of a good run, and whether it's justifiable to make arguably 2 moves for this particular player who you will be probably removing in 4 weeks' time, and that's obviously Enzo Fernandez. I mean, it is take for example, if you do have someone like a Szoboszlai or even an Anderson who's kind of steadily moving along, etc. I mean, do you think it's worth the 2 moves that it would take to actually get him in and out of your team based on the information that we have so far? I have to go to Harry first on this one for obvious reasons, being Mr. Chelsea.
Yeah, so I mean, I owned Enzo earlier on in the season, and I can't help but still feel that I don't think he's the best FPL pick when I watch him play, but he has so many routes to contribute in terms of points, right? I mean, against Brentford, yes, he got an assist, but he got an assist for blocking a clearance. And then this weekend, he got a penalty for, I think, what the majority would agree is not a penalty. So yes, he's got points over the last couple of weeks, but they're not points that I look at and think are replicable going forward. But then again, you could say, well, he's got a few, lucky points over the past couple of games, and all it needs is for him to start getting the ones which are more predictable going forward. But I'm not going to be able to buy Enzo this week, so I'll add that as a disclaimer and as a caveat that I'm trying to find reasoning that it's acceptable not to own him and not to buy him going into the next few weeks. But he's one of those players, I feel like, a bit like with Rodgers for you, Danny, that yes, if he gets a 10-pointer, I'm not that surprised. But also if he blanks and we score 3 goals, I'm also not that surprised. It's not like I think about a player like Mbuemo potentially. If I think United are scoring 3 goals this weekend, I'd be pretty certain that I could say Mbuemo is going to have some involvement in that. Whereas I feel like Enzo, I'm less convinced of that. Now he might get 2 goals, but he could easily blank as well as that. So I find Enzo quite a difficult one to judge, because when I watch us play, and from an eye test point of view for Chelsea, his output doesn't look that great. And he's one of those players, he gets loads of big chances. He was like top for big chances over the first 10 weeks, but actual number of chances, he's really low. So either he goes a game without doing anything, but if he does do something, it's basically a big chance. And that's quite difficult to predict. But if he gets one, then you're going to love having him because he finishes them so well. So Enzo is a difficult one. I think if you want a Chelsea player for the next 4, he's great, but it is 2 transfers because you are going to want to sell him in a few weeks.
Yeah. No, I walked this through forward myself, and there is an argument that he's quite useful potentially in that blank game week as well. But for a while, it's quite hairy after 28. Sorry, Danny, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, I mean, one of the things that I find scary about Enzo is, and it's another good reminder of it, is just his minutes. So you do always worry that, when you think about, I've got to get through these 4 fixtures that are really good fixtures. If you're not going to be able to get him in, or you're not going to get him in, you sort of think, God, that's like the full 4 fixtures. It's like 97 minutes of each time is what you kind of think. It doesn't mean that it will be. So I'll come to that. But that is what you kind of naturally think. You think it's quite hard to get through a whole game of Enzo when he runs so much, and he does always make those runs into the box. He does try and sort of sniff out the big chance. So it makes him such a solid pick. Like, minutes alone make him such a solid pick. And then you've obviously got potential penalty share, and you've got position on the pitch, and you've got a team that looks like they're being quite an attacking team at the moment. But obviously, then you factor in, which we don't really know what it looks like, but I don't think people are talking enough about the fixture schedule for Chelsea, for example. Like, Enzo will probably play every game, but it's still, so for example, this week, it's Wednesday to Saturday. So it's really bad. It is Wednesday to Saturday this week, isn't it?
Well, actually, whilst you're talking that through, I'll just very quickly bring up this slide, which shows the crunch.
And then it's Tuesday away at Arsenal in the Cup.
Exactly. Then it's Tuesday away at Arsenal in the Cup. So, these are games that you expect it to really take it out of you a bit. I mean, Napoli is going to be a tough game, and they're going to rely on Enzo Fernandez. He's going to have to really work hard. And then the same against Arsenal, which is a really interesting fixture, and there's big opportunity. I'm so glad it's 3-2 and it's close. I mean, I don't know, like, Andre Santos, for example, like what can he do in terms of minutes? Because that has implications for Enzo. Can he play all of those games? Is he going to play in centre mid? Because if he's not, Enzo's going to go back into centre mid if he needs to be managed in any way, or if anyone else does, and then they do have options at the 10, like whether it's João Pedro, even if it's not Palmer, whatever, there's various players who can play there. There are a lot of things that could happen that mean that Enzo doesn't get everything you want to get out of him on paper. So it's a really difficult one to read, because I am scared. He is a good pick. It makes it even worse that he did just get that penalty that was never a penalty, because then now it's a bit like what we just talked about, where we haven't owned a player and he's just got everyone who owns him 8 points and he never should have got them anything. And it's just really annoying. So now you already feel behind. So then that clouds it a little bit as well. But, ultimately, he is a very good pick. You can survive him quite easily, a bit like you can survive Rodgers quite easily. But then he could also, with the minutes and with the penalties and set pieces, he could also easily return in every game. And it's so difficult, and you can't own them all. And it does always come back to that question: is who do you own instead? Because if they are good picks, that helps an awful lot. I mean, even an Anderson, you're going to get something from him every week. You're going to dig out 4 or 5 points away from whatever Enzo gets every week.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really tough. Whereas I don't necessarily feel that way with Njai, by the way. I feel like I'm relying a little bit more on luck, which is very frustrating. But anyway, so yeah, But I mean, the question with Enzo is for a lot of people, is it Enzo or Mbuemo?
Yeah.
And that's still a really difficult question because the only reason why it's a difficult question in my mind, personally, is minutes. Because if I thought Mbuemo and Enzo had the same minutes for sure, then I would definitely pick Mbuemo, no problem. So
I'm just looking at while we're talking Enzo, the Chelsea lineup has just come out.
Oh, great.
Which Enzo is in alongside a few potential rotation prone players. João Pedro starting up front, which I've said all week that I expected, and he's the most transferred in forward going into the weekend. And Reece James also starts, as does Andre Santos. There's no Palmer in the starting lineup. And I tweeted I think yesterday, that a lineup with no Palmer starting and João Pedro would really put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of predicting how Chelsea line up against West Ham this weekend, because you've got to expect that James doesn't play against West Ham.
Is Palmer on the bench?
Palmer's on the bench. Now, I think Chelsea would be stupid to not play Palmer against Napoli and start him against West Ham with Chelsea on the Tuesday. So I would probably expect Palmer to be on the bench again. But Andre Santos is playing. You've got Reece James playing. You've got João Pedro playing. All players that are suddenly going to need a rest at the weekend. So Enzo almost certainly has to play, but it's trying to predict what position he starts in at the weekend. And for those of you looking at, I mean, I've said it all week that I thought João Pedro would start this and not start West Ham, and we'll see what happens. Chalobah, interestingly, isn't starting.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Okay. And you need to win this game, don't you?
Yeah. Reece James is playing centre back.
Whilst we're on it, we'll come to this question a bit later on, by the way, but Liverpool with a full first team against Qarabag as well. So Ekitike starts that one, which is interesting. And Calafiore apparently is back for Arsenal as well. Bruno G on the bench for those of you who still have him as well.
Ekitike starts alongside Gakpo and Salah.
Oh, okay.
So he's gone back to the sort of usual formation rather than this narrow. So it's, I suppose Ekitike's, that's probably good news for Ekitike as an owner, because if it was no Gakpo and Ekitike starts, then maybe you worry about the weekend. But
okay, yeah, we'll see what kind of minutes he gets.
And we didn't get our Saka start, thankfully.
Okay, there's something. There's something. I mean, seeing as you veered into Bryan, veered into lovely beardy Bryan, Danny there as well. So we have to kind of come to him next. I mean, the question there actually just towards the bottom of the screen, is it worth saving on Mbuemo and going to Rodgers or Cunha? We'll come to that in a second. But I find, I mean, I shared a kind of tweet on this, Harry, midweek, where it was that kind of, Saka does start apparently in the chat. Yeah.
He doesn't.
I don't know whether there's a wind up or not. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Anyway, the tweet showed something we referred to last week, a path with a sort of lovely sort of sunny scene where happiness and plenty, and that was the path towards Bryan, and all other midfield picks being a disaster. That's kind of how strongly we kind of love him here from previous seasons. I mean, Danny, I'll come to you first on this one. I mean, do you think there is an argument, because I've seen one or two teams still knocking about with Cunha, and obviously it is a little bit of a debate going on there at the moment as to whether you can hold him with the Dorgu injury. I think it's 10 weeks projected, whether you can go to him and save a bit of money, or keep him and still play him. I mean, what is your take on that? Because I know that
I mean, Cunha, I mean, Jesus, like, I've forgotten about that, but that's another he's definitely not playing, by the way. Eze is playing, so we know it's a B team. That's definitely that's another leak I wish I hadn't seen. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Leaks. If I hadn't seen that leak, I'd have got Cunha off the bench the first game against City, and he got 4 points. I wouldn't have brought Tavernier in, who then got injured. I know he got a lucky penalty, but it still cost me 2 transfers because I've gone Tavernier to Njai, who's then blanked, and Cunha has got 4 points off the bench and then 9 points off the bench, and now he looks like a very likely starter, and he's a god, which helps. So, I mean, obviously with United, it's interesting, and I'm a little bit scared with the minutes. I mean, I don't. It's very hard to know still. I mean, the simple fact is, if I was guessing, I mean, a lot of this is probably obvious, but you would expect that Mbuemo starts, which is great. I think he's the most likely to start, pretty much. You'd expect Ahmad to start on the right still because he's been brilliant and he's like sensational, and then you'd expect Cunha to start on the left. So, how the Dorgu minutes affect them? I mean, I've heard some people say, well, I think it's really good for Mbuemo, and now we're sort of very likely get 90 minutes. And I'm not sure that's true, actually. I mean, I don't know. I hope it is. But in terms of that left wing, I'm not sure who the manager feels yet, confident about playing there. I mean, one of the first things we heard when Carrick joined or took over, or maybe even just before that, I think it was around that time anyway, was that we wanted a new left winger. So straight away I was like, what? Why? That made me worried about Cunha, because thinking, do you think he doesn't fit in to the system? And does that mean you want a proper winger? Which it seemed like he did for the first 2 games. I mean, we don't know because that was Arsenal and City, so how much can you take from it? But this combination of hearing United wanted to get a new left winger and then Dorgu playing both games, kind of, that was like, oh, right, okay, this isn't great. So they probably still want another left winger. So what that suggests to me is that they don't feel great about Cunha playing there, and that presumably they don't feel good about anyone else playing there. I don't think someone like a Mason Mount is going to get into this type of system or Carrick's style of play. So if Cunha is the only one who remotely can play there at the moment, because he can in the kind of left 10 or a little bit on the left, then, is it that, if and when Sesko comes on, it's still for Mbuemo? I don't know. I would like to think that it might be even more likely for Ahmad, and then you'd move Mbuemo to the right wing, because Mbuemo's sensational on the right. He's brilliant in the 9, but he's sensational on the right. But maybe Carrick absolutely loves Ahmad way more than we realise on the right. Maybe Ahmad is less likely to come off than Mbuemo, because he's got the right wing locked down. I don't know. So really at the moment it is better for Mbuemo's minutes than it was already, and it is better for Cunha's minutes. It's much more so better for Cunha's minutes because I now expect him to start. It's better for Mbuemo's minutes because there's one fewer player to actually come on for them. It's now only Sesko that's coming on for him rather than Sesko or Cunha. Sesko. So they're both better for minutes, but it does remain to be seen what exactly it looks like for Mbuemo, because obviously, and I am a little bit worried. I don't want someone who's coming off in the 75th minute. I don't care what score is. I really don't. So I'll be really disappointed if he's still the first one to come off on the 70th minute or the 75th minute or at any point. So yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, that may well not be the case. His minutes have gone up, and he is a sensational pick. I mean, we'll talk about how good a pick they are in a minute. You go, Harry, because in terms of minutes, though, I'm still remains to be seen a little bit.
Do you think that Mbuemo and Cunha fall into the category of it is acceptable to wait a week on them to see who lines up where, who is the one that comes off late in the game? And because if it is Mbuemo up front and then he keeps Cunha on and puts Sesko on for Mbuemo, or Sesko comes on for Ahmad and Mbuemo goes to the right wing, is this one of the examples where it's not a bad thing to be a week late to make sure you get the right one?
Yeah, I think the only answer to that question can be yes, it is okay. And I think any other answer is silly, because there are some things that are facts there. You wait a week, and for a fact, you get more information. Whether it's the same information or not, you still get more information, which is a good thing. And we always, through fear, overplay these one fixture kind of moments. We think someone's just like guaranteed to do well, and of course that isn't the case. Like Fulham are a good team. Like no one's an easy game in the Premier League. We don't know what United are going to look like yet against this team where they have more expectations, where they're expected to win, where it is going to be a bit of a deeper block or whatever. And, do you already own some good players? And, then all of those things, if you already own some reasonable players, then it is absolutely fine to wait for a week. And I think it actually shows a lot of that kind of restraint and kind of, skill in many ways. I also think it's fine to get them as well, because again, like it is a very good fixture. I'd be very confident about a start for any of those guys. So they're all fine. But, I mean, with United, obviously, the fascinating thing about United at the moment is the way I see it, and I've said last week and the week before when we were talking about like this is a team that's actually playing football that most teams aren't doing. It's a different approach to the game at the moment to most of the league. It's not this set piece FC stuff. It's possession. It's attacking. It's really good players in those positions. I think a lot of teams are just not going to be used to how to deal with that. They're really not. I don't know how Fulham go about saying, like, how do we stop this at the moment? And we're not going to be cautious. Carrick, that just isn't Carrick's approach anyway. And it wouldn't be his approach. He hasn't got anything to lose at this point, So, so I feel confident about our approach. So that's why I feel good about all of those players. But I mean, the other to answer that question as well is, I suppose, a question to you, Harry, is what can we actually learn in terms of those picks? Really, like, it's quite hard to answer that. So if, for example, Mbuemo comes off on the 75th or 80th minute, Cunha plays 90 and Ahmad plays 90, I still think that's quite hard to decide what to do. Is that then enough to go Mbuemo or Ahmad? I mean, sorry, is that then enough to go Cunha or Ahmad over Mbuemo? I'm not sure.
It's how much you wait, because is that he does it for that game? Like, it's difficult with only 1 week's information to know whether that's replicable. But if Mbuemo played 70 and Sesko came on and Cunha played 90, it might be enough for people to go Cunha instead of Mbuemo. Now, it might not be the right solution, but based off the information you've got, it probably becomes the better pick.
Yeah. And I mean, Cunha is the one. I mean, he looks on fire as well at the moment, and he looks so fresh and so up for it. And he's such a good player. He's such a difference maker. I don't know how much cheaper he is. Probably, he's probably not.
It's only it's only 0.3, I think.
0.3 or so. But yeah, I mean, you don't tear your team up. Sorry, Richie, just say you don't tear your team up. You don't take hits. You don't do something that you're unsure about. You don't remove good players. Yeah.
Well, steady on. See my dilemma later. Yeah, wait before making that kind of a call. I mean, there's a few comments in the chat about and I do agree with this. It was on FML as well that it's that role for Mbuemo is pretty hard physical work that he was doing in the last 2 games. Right, there's a lot of chasing down, a lot of work that he wouldn't have been used to. Obviously he can handle it. He's an experienced player with a lot of minutes under his belt and that sort of thing. So I do think that has to be taken into consideration. I would strongly suspect that his minutes will go back up. I do suspect personally that he does at least play some of the next few games in a different role. I think that's quite likely. But obviously, Danny, I defer to your wisdom on that one. But I think personally there is enough to go now. But there is a little bit of deep-rooted pro Bryan bias in my head. But yeah, I'm fairly cool with that. But I do think that Dorgu news has really helped. Personally, I've been waiting for price changes and that sort of thing, midweek fixtures, etc., to do anything. I know a lot of people have gone early, but yeah, I think this information definitely helps us in that decision as well. Just on that question, actually, Harry, to make sure that we got an answer. I mean, in your position, how does Rodgers, for example, stack up against Mbuemo? Is he? Because I don't think you've got him either. Is that fair?
I'd have any of these desirable mids.
None of the desirable players. Yeah,
I've got none of them. Stuck here with double Arsenal mids as they fail to pick up any points at the moment. I think I quite like Rodgers as a pick because he is a player that I know what I'm going to get from him. I do feel like Danny that. I feel like he has been quite lucky to get points over the past few weeks, but I'm also not that surprised when he gets them. Like, they've got a very nice run of fixtures between now and the sort of game week 32 wildcard where Rodgers is going to play 90 pretty much every single week. They don't have European qualifiers. So more just a safety if you're low on transfers. I quite like Rodgers for that reason because there are unknowns about the United attackers. You are probably going to have to sell Enzo at some point, although Enzo to Harry Wilson, if you don't have, looks like a perfect switch in a few weeks. But Rodgers, you kind of know already, like he's the least of the unknowns out of all of those picks. He might not be the best of them. He probably isn't the best of them. In fact, for the short term, he's probably the worst of them. But at least you know the sort of variables for him much more than you do for the others.
I do think you hit upon something quite important, Harry, which is that it's worth walking your teams forward, especially if you're not on wildcard. And something like, as you say, if you got an Enzo and you got an out route to Harry Wilson, that's cool. Rodgers and actually Brentford fall into this category as well. That they are a nice pickup potentially in around about sort of game week 27 as well. So if you don't have them now, for example, and you wanted to hop off Saka in 27 and spread the money elsewhere, something along those lines. I do think it's not like Enzo. Enzo feels to me like you either go now or you very probably don't. Whereas Rodgers, I think he's there as a fairly steady option, whatever the situation is. I'd personally also, it'd be useful to see a week or two of how Villa handle the fact that they've obviously got Douglas Luiz back in, few injuries. I think McGinn has had a fairly serious, he had an operation or something as well. And a few other
and Tielemans and Kamara, all three of them are out for quite a long time, I think. So Douglas Luiz, I mean, he's been a great FPL pick in the past, right? 4.9, probably don't want to run that risk of going there straight away, but could be one that we look at in a few weeks.
Yeah, so another one by sort of 27-ish, 28 or whatever it might be, might be quite useful. The next question, by the way, I thought this was I wasn't sure if is it Marcus Tavernier? Or I just made it up in my head there.
Yeah.
But anyway, someone called Marcus is asking a question about Tavernier. So what's going on there? We don't know. But actually, I mean, Danny, you've got rid of Tavernier, haven't you? You did have him in your team.
Yeah,
very, very unfortunate situation there.
Yeah.
But yeah, any thoughts on you went for Njai in the same pickup point, which is obviously last week. But for those sort of fishing in those waters, any thoughts about midfielders in that price bracket? I guess the sort of 5.5 to 6.5 kind of bracket is what we're looking at.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly on Rodgers as well, because it's kind of the same conversation. I know he's a bit more expensive, but I do like Rodgers as a pick. Zoff used to talk last season about the squeaky bum test or something. They used to call it. I can't remember what he used to call it, but it was like if a player makes you scared, it's going to be them who score. Like I'm going to get them in, and that is true. Like the moment about Villa, like when I see Villa score, I am like, oh shit, because I'm thinking I'm going to be surprised here if Rodgers isn't a goal or assist.
Yeah,
and that says a lot. That does say a lot. I mean, but it's strange because he's a little bit like Enzo, but without all the roots. He has slightly right now even more consistent minutes because they've got a bit more of a kind sort of fixture or whatever. And he's more consistently in that position, so he's got a great position and fantastic minutes, and he's just a great player. So I do think he's really solid. And the other thing, just on that point, is that I think with everything that's happened recently, Watkins goes down a bit. Like it was taking me a lot to sort of feel good about Watkins anyway. But obviously they've now got these extra strike. They've got is Abraham signed now? Tammy Abraham signed, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So they've got somebody they can give him minutes off with. It means he's even less likely on pens, although because he potentially is or was, even though he's absolutely terrible at them. So Watkins has taken quite a big dent. So if people are looking at it going, oh, I don't want Rodgers because I'm going to get Watkins, I actually think that's switched a bit. If you can, I think I'd rather have Rodgers really just for the. So yeah, he is quite a scary pick, and I mean he's about 55% owned as well, or something stupid. So again, he can just very quickly just destroy your game week, like a lot of people can at the moment. Semenyo, we should probably talk about Semenyo at some point. I will do actually when we talk about wildcards, but.
Yeah, actually, do you know what? That and the Tavernier question, what I'm going to do is shelve it because I think that will be picked up in the wildcard drafts that we look at anyway. So let's just move straight on to the kind of Arsenal mids before there's a few more questions on the next slide. But I mean, this is an interesting one because we're both Saka owners, Danny. Harry, you've got both midfielders, is that right?
Yeah, both mids.
So yeah, interesting this one. So FPL Grimes asks, is it worth the Saka to Rice switcheroo to enable upgrades elsewhere? I mean, I feel like you've got form on this one, Harry.
Don't even get me started. I've basically owned Saka for every blank and none of his points. And I've been pretty convinced that he's not been worth the money, and I keep buying him basically. Anyway, how to waste 5 free transfers when they give it to you. I could write a book on it. I think the thing is, I think we can all agree that Saka's not been worth the money with what he's done. But the issue with selling him is we're so close to a potential double now that if he scores against Leeds and then against Sunderland, and you sell Saka this week and suddenly he scores in back-to-back games and he becomes the best captain for the double, I don't know if the upside for the next 2 weeks is worth that risk in my eyes, because you're not going to learn anything new on Rice in the next couple of games. If he gets returns, he gets returns, but they're going to be low XG. He'll get an assist from a corner. He might get DEFCON. But if Saka suddenly gets, a couple of goals, if Gyökeres, who's starting tonight, if he is then not starting and Saka's got penalties back again and we get to a double and Saka's suddenly looking in better form, which seems unlikely at the moment, I just don't know if the risk of selling Saka is worth it. And people say they want to spread the funds. I could happily build a team with 5 million in the bank at the moment and not feel like I've got to spend it on anything. So I don't know if there's necessarily obvious places that I'd spend the money in real haste. So as much as Saka's not been great, I don't think I'd move him.
See, it's funny. It's funny to me how you frame it, Harry, because I think we think quite differently in the game. Because you frame it in terms of risk, which is interesting, whereas I frame the exact same question in terms of opportunity. And like, so Saka is obviously really frustrating, but with every week that passes, it's becoming like, which makes it even more frustrating. He becomes a more interesting pick because people are, I mean, he's already, what is his EO is like, it's 30 to 40% most weeks or something. I don't know what it is now, but he's about to drop in price again tonight, I think, or he did last night.
I think he went last night. Yeah, when I updated it for last week and he was my captain and he was 30% owned, you suddenly realise what a huge difference that would make if he'd have done anything.
Exactly. So I'm kind of thinking kind of partly optimistically, like what does that opportunity look like? And partly pessimistically in that rather than in terms of risk in that, like, I don't necessarily believe that opportunity is going to come, going to come to fruition. And that's the really frustrating thing because, the models obviously have got him really high all the time. And I'm not sure that it's understandable, but I'm not sure how much you can really pay attention to that. Oh, have we actually lost Rich there? Well, are we still live? I hope so. Don't know. Are we still live? Does the chat tell us we're still live?
Yeah, we are. We are. It's just the two of us.
Okay.
I was about to message saying I'm going to go and check
Sorry.
on my jacket potatoes, which would have left you on your own.
That's fine. No, yeah, Jesus. Don't do that, Harry. That's not the time. Yeah,
I'll get the slides back up. Sorry, carry on.
It's fine. So where was I? So what I was saying was, it gets to a point where you think, oh, is Saka, how unlucky has Saka been to not get the points? Or, does he put in up good numbers? Like, owners obviously have been a bit unlucky because he's done really hardly anything. But obviously, like, I really think now that it is very much a function of the way Arsenal play and what support he's getting and how, the extent to which they're actually attacking and playing open play football, doing stuff that suits his game, playing with a striker that works for him, playing with the right back that works for him. And obviously this long-term injury that he did have, because he hasn't been the same attacking force, has he, that he was since a year ago before that injury, when he was often single-handedly doing things and brilliant things and scoring incredible rifles from long range. And you know what I mean? He hasn't been the same thing. So this is the sort of really worrying and frustrating thing as an owner is how long do you sit on this 10 million asset that is it just being silly because he isn't actually doing it? And I don't actually think he really will. But like you said, Harry, I mean, if they double in 26, you do have this guy that's this massive opportunity. You suddenly have a guy who's 10 million quid, who's like on paper is amazing and should double that week, by the way. He should play both games because I think they've got
they got Wigan in the middle. So
Wigan in the middle. So that's the really good thing is it looks really good for minutes. So then if you suddenly have a guy in that double that no one else owns, and maybe he does get a penalty or another penalty, or maybe it's a couple of assists and DEFCON and a penalty or a long range goal, it's huge. So that's another question about Wildcard when we come to Wildcard is one of the reasons I don't really like it, or one of the reasons why, it's difficult is if you do get rid of Saka on a Wildcard, for example, you're giving up that opportunity.
Yeah, you are. I'm going to give a really incredibly boring addition to this as well, which is that I think I told you, Danny, the other week, is I quite like a bit of regulation and self-discipline. And Saka being in the team as that sort of 10 million pivot, it enables me to be able to think, well, in game week 27, when this is all over, unless he's looking absolutely phenomenal, then that's a perfect time to be able to use that extra, let's say, £2-3 million. I really like some punts in kind of game week 27. If someone like a Sharda, for example, is a really nice one to go alongside Mbuemo. Thiago, for example, up the third striker spot, something like that. So personally, that's kind of my rough plan there. But there's almost no chance at all that I'll be moving him in, even if he does get benched in one of the the following games. I think I'm just sort of plugged in now, and I'll accept the risk. And yes, it might be crap when we come to the end of it, but what can you do? You just made the bet now, and it's a chance to go up against. I don't know what the wildcard percentages are this week, but I'm assuming that this is it's an opportunity, as you say, as much as it is a risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, like with the Saka thing, that again, a broad conversation about whether to wildcard now or why I might not like wildcard now is again the information gained. And with that Saka price point, just as you say, in 2 or 3 weeks, that price point allows you to do a lot more with that information.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
And
all of my planning is based on this idea that in game week 27, I got an opportunity to pivot with 2, 3, maybe 4 seems a bit rich transfers to be able to do something like getting Thiago in, Sharda in, or whoever, Rodgers or whoever it might be at the time. Looks really interesting. I'm just going to do a quick shout out because I'm very badly behaved with this, Danny. But the last time I put in the chat about likes and subscribes, it crashed. So if you were interested in men going to the oven to warm up their jacket potatoes, or sites crashing, or whatever it might be, please do share, like, subscribe, and all of that kind of good stuff. That will be really, really good. As well, not just for us, of course, for Harry as well. He could do with an extra couple of thousand on his channel. So please do go over and make sure you watch his good stuff as well. You come back at the right time because you're a Hugo Ekitike owner, or Hugo the boss, as I call him, up until the point where he sucked, and now I can no longer call him that anymore. Lots of questions about him. He's a tricky one, isn't he? Because of let's be honest. I mean, Danny he resisted temptation and he stuck on Thiago and he won. Let's just be honest. But the question here, what to do with Hugo Ekitike? Hold or sell to João Pedro, who's the favourite option of this question asker, Alex Ball. Evan Nilsson, Thiago, Robbie, lots of other strikers mentioned. FPL Squirtle, nice name. Is Tieno Barry worth a squirt? Okay, well, I'm not quite sure how to answer that last part, but let's start with Hugo. I mean, what are your feels on this one, Harry? I mean, did last week give you trust issues?
Yeah, so as someone who sold Thiago to Ekitike, saw Thiago score 5 goals in 2 games, to then buy Thiago back and now has both of them for no points. This is a question very close to my heart at the moment. It did give me trust issues, more than it gives me trust issues in Arnie Slot rather than it does anything to do with Ekitike. That I just don't I mean, of course it's a red zone thing, obviously, right? But how he can look at his attack with who they've got available and think that they can create enough chances and win football games without Ekitike anywhere near their lineup, I don't really know. And more the performance that I saw against them in Bournemouth, the more I'm convinced that he's still a good pick. And when you look at the options that you've got this week, João Pedro, wouldn't go anywhere near. He might well start West Ham, but I think you've got to look at that Arsenal away game and wonder which striker he's going to want for that. And playing a Delap who's going to be up, who likes to pin himself up against centre-backs against Gabriel and Saliba doesn't feel like the best idea. So you've got that. Evan Nilsson, his goals this season, I was looking at who he's actually scored against. He's basically only scored against the big 6 and hasn't scored against anyone else so far this season. And there's several of his goals. I mean, he's getting the occasional chance, but a lot of his goals have been quite fortunate, like he's been gifted them. Thiago, I don't think you buy for the next few games. If you haven't gone there already, you're probably not going to want to buy before Villa, Newcastle and Arsenal. And Robbie is good this week at home to Burnley, but not great after that. I think the only reason to sell Ekitike this week is if you need the money for something else.
Danny, I'll come to you. I've already got a mini speech prepared for this one in a minute, but I'm going to build up to it. So.
I mean, the thing about Ekitike is I think that if I was making a bet, I think that Slot's going to lose his job. And I think
there's been a lot today.
He's been a lot today.
There was a lot on Monday about him losing his job, and then there's been more today about Xabi Alonso, hasn't there?
Yeah, and that this dude who's posted, I get a dude posted Xabi Alonso with like an hourglass next to it as if it's happening, and someone shared that guy is being followed by people like Fabrizio, David Ornstein, etc., etc. So it looks like a reliable dude. I mean, that just fits with what you would expect to happen, really. Anyway, I mean, it's been like a lot of time now where Liverpool players don't actually look like they actually know what they're doing. They don't actually look like they know how to play football, which is the most worrying thing for Klopp. So that really should bring like massive alarm bells. And obviously Alonso is available, and Alonso is Liverpool, and you know.
I think the other thing with Liverpool and Arne Slot is he's been there a year and a half, and suddenly 2 games ago he's decided to try something completely different, and now it's not worked for a couple of games, so he switched back again. I mean, from a footballing point of view, I don't think it bodes particularly well for him that he doesn't really know the solution to the issues that they're having.
Exactly, and wasn't it weird when did you see that interview that he went on that BN Sports, whatever it's called? I don't even know if that's the right one, but with Carragher and all them lot and Michael Richards. And he was sort of, as he always is, really assured and confident in himself. And he was sort of making a joke of the fact, but also being serious, saying, it's funny that you're saying this now, Jamie, that we play boring football, because one of the reasons we started going tight at the back was because you said we needed to. And I was thinking, is that funny? Is that a joke? Is he being serious? I think he's being serious. So what, you change your tactics because Carragher sort of had a go at you?
Because a pundit. If you change your tactics every time a pundit has a go at you, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, I mean, incredible, really. Remember when Carragher did have that massive go at him after the Bournemouth game, the first game of the season. But yeah, I mean, so basically, what I'm saying is this is another one where it's like information, because if I've got Ekitike, or even if I don't, and Alonso takes over, like I've got a lot of faith in Alonso in terms of him as a manager, and also that's a new manager bounce that you expect to happen. That's one where you expect the players aren't very happy at the moment. At least certain players. I mean, certain players have sounded unhappy. So you'd expect some kind of a bounce there and suddenly be organised, and I'd suddenly feel better about Van Dijk, who we'll talk about, and I'd suddenly know their fixtures do get good. I can't remember what they are, but they get good, don't they, in like 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah. But even like Newcastle at home this weekend, and I know it's Newcastle and we look at it badly, but they're away to PSG tonight. They have not looked great very much recently, particularly on the road. So, and then it's City next week, which isn't great. But then, as you say, Sunderland, Forest, West Ham, Wolves, Spurs in a run that if you can get through the Newcastle and City games, like if Ekitike was to score in one of those 2 games and suddenly you've got that run.
Yeah. And then
it's just
combined with that is what are the alternatives? I mean, thankfully for Ekitike owners, now the Thiago fixtures are bad for the next 3 or whatever it is. João Pedro, people love because he scored some goals, but as you say, and I wouldn't even say beware of fans at this point when Harry's talking about Chelsea, because surely the minutes do look bad. Surely they really do. And then obviously Evan Nilsson, they do have fantastic fixtures. I can never ever seem to get very excited about Evan Nilsson. He's probably a bit of a blind spot for me, but I've never owned him. I've never really felt like owning him, but I do admit that the fixtures are fantastic, and he has looked better.
I have this thing in my mind that I just think Evan Nilsson's a terrible finisher. And he scored his goals this season, as I was saying, Spurs away. He then scored away at United. He scored against Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool. And he's not scored against anyone else. And he's played pretty much every game. And I know he feels like one of those players that's complete opposite of a flat track bully. That he loves the half chance he gets in those big games, but how much you read into that is, but he's probably the one I would buy if I was selling this week.
I think there's just a little bit of a caveat there, which is I don't know whether you guys will remember it, but do you remember there was a game last season? This is when Kluivert hit that absolutely ridiculous run of form, and there was a game away. Penalties. Yeah. There was a game away at Wolves, I think it was, where I'm pretty sure Evan Nilsson won 3 penalties. It was some unbelievable,
he did.
Not fluke, but just this sort of freak set of circumstances, etc. And I think that's kind of how I see Evan Nilsson, is that when he's on it, he seems to get into these situations where it's because of his quality of pressing. That's the first siren of the evening for regular fans down here. I'm not being chased by the police, but yeah, Evan Nilsson is in one of those kind of players who harries the goalkeeper, puts defenders in this kind of awkward set of circumstances, etc. So I do think that's one of his strengths, whether it helps him finish or not. But I remember during that run of games, he ended up getting quite a few sort of fairly easy tap-in chances and goals just simply because he was really good at pressing. I don't know whether that still is the case. And of course, it may well be that this new signing, Rayan, makes a difference as well. So there is that kind of... I know what you mean. I'm a little bit warmer on the idea of Evan Nilsson than probably most.
Just to say, like, you know, looking at him, I know the minutes have gone better and they will be better because of all the injuries. But, if, you know, just a little bit of closer scrutiny. I mean, he had a 77 minutes, then a 62 minutes, then a 45 minutes, then a 81 minutes, then a 73 minutes, then a 63 minutes, and then 2 90s.
I think he hasn't had an alternative in the past couple of games because there's been no Clive and Semenyo. But Unal is now back in the squad, and who knows what they're going to do in the window. And it might not be that they sign a striker, but they might someone who plays the Krupi Junior position, and then he doesn't start, and then he comes on for Evan Nilsson. So I do feel like Bournemouth, and people are looking at their defence, they probably feel like the team that could change the most between now and the end of the window.
Yeah. And the other thing is, don't get me wrong, it's a very good fixture run, but people are just seeing like green but you know, Wolves away, you know, Wolves have been decent. Wolves away, then Villa at home. It's not a great fixture. Everton away is always a stinker of a fixture. Then West Ham away. I mean, obviously West Ham are looking a bit better now, but you know, they've got 3 away games in the next 4. Then they've got Sunderland. It's not amazing, you know. But
just to go back.
Sorry, Danny. Just one quick thing there. I mean, I will say I'm pretty sure Everton recently. I mean, they conceded 4 at home to Brentford. I'm pretty sure Newcastle smashed 4 past them at Everton as well. I mean, it's not quite as straightforward.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you do get that sometimes with Moyes and Everton, though, and then usually get those get a response where they just sort of tighten up. And I don't know, they're so unpredictable, Everton. They're either really they do capitulate sometimes, but I just generally see it as a bad fixture, I think.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I mean, if you already brought him in or something, Rich, you're getting quite defensive here.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't done any moves. No.
I suppose just to put it like this, if any of us were on a free hit this week, presumably Haaland would go in. It sounds like most of us would probably end up playing one striker. Or if you had to pick a second one, there isn't really much to pick from. If you had to, I mean, maybe you'd go Watkins at home to Brentford, but there's issues with that going forward with Abraham. It feels like Evan Nilsson is just the best of a bad bunch at the moment.
Yeah, it's really.
But that's why I wouldn't sell Ekitike.
Yeah, I think that's the answer to it. It is bleak out there at the moment. Like you said, I mean, free hit, you probably would go Watkins, I guess, but yeah, you wouldn't transfer right now.
No. I mean, the thing I was going to say, I will shorten the brief rant that I had planned earlier this week because I've called on it. As usual, talking on a Wednesday does help because if we'd talked on a Sunday or a Monday, I'd have been all over the place. But with Ekitike, and obviously we'll watch the manager circumstances, and that might kind of change things. But I'm just going to say it here: I've got trust issues now, and maybe it's being a child of divorce. So you know what film reference I've got some of you in the chat. But with someone like him, I don't know if he's going to turn up for me. Basically, I view my FPL team a bit too sort of personally, like they're my guys. But I don't know whether Hugo's going to turn up for me anymore, and that immediately gives me problems looking at lineups every week and that kind of thing. So I'll just very quickly on this one because we've seen it earlier today. In this stream. But again, bring up the fixtures and again Liverpool's fixture run is an interesting one. I wish I'd fast forward it a bit further because again we miss out some of the crunches here. But obviously starting tonight, Newcastle on Saturday, a little bit of a gap then to Manchester City, and then there's Sunderland. It's a very, very short one. So Sunderland is the one that I would be somewhat concerned about. I can't remember after that. Maybe Harry remembers.
They then have Brighton in the cup, and I was talking. There was. I don't know if you followed the Jump the Wave predictions, but only one of them, their number one predictor was the only one not to predict Ekitike to start. So I asked him, and he feels that the Sunderland game is the one, as you say, comes with the most risk, and it will depend whether they favour the Sunderland game or the Brighton game in the cup. But apart from that, it feels pretty all right. And it also depends if they finish in the top 8 of the Champions League as well, right? Because if they don't, then they're going to have playoffs after the Forest game, which then adds extra confusion in the build up to it.
Yeah, and it depends who the manager is.
So do we know that Xavi Alonso is any better for Ekitike? I don't know what system he plays, I just know him from Leverkusen playing a back five, but
I believe he plays like a 3-4-2-1, but I may be wrong. Apparently it's like very organized and sort of high press, it's very much pressing, and it's sort of like possession based. And
we're all going to buy Frimpong then.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't. I think he's very well regarded. I mean, so I would have enough faith there. I think. I mean, the guy as well, don't you know? He's an intelligent guy, and he was a fantastic footballer himself. And again, I just expect that sort of bounce. But I mean, looking at that gap there, maybe they're looking at that gap in terms of after Newcastle this weekend, because if he does come in soon, they've got a big gap there before the City game to actually get some training in with the players and stuff. So yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Last question and then we'll go back to the wildcard drafts that Danny's put together, and then we'll go on to our teams to wrap things up a bit later on. So just captaincy now. Is Bruno Fernandes the standout captain, or is Spurs away the perfect fixture for I think they were meant to say redemption arc, something along those lines. So ignore that. But FPL Easy, thank you for your question. Where's the captaincy sit at the moment, Danny?
It's on Bruno for me at the moment.
Yeah.
Carrots in the oven for Harry this time. Yeah, it's on Bruno at the moment. How about you? You're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's on Bruno as well, actually. And actually, it's interesting, isn't it? Some weeks that when you're setting up for the first time, you're surprised at how quickly you make a decision like that, because it is quite a big decision, isn't it? But yeah, it went straight to Bruno, actually. I feel pretty calm on that at the moment, maybe worryingly so.
Yeah, I feel pretty calm on it as well. But yeah, and again, maybe worryingly so, because I'm just thinking, you do expect City to be good. I expect Haaland to be good. Looking at it now, 4:30 Sunday. I mean, one thing obviously is that Thomas Frank typically did well against. I know he typically did well against City at Brentford.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's a good record.
So there's something there. But yeah, I just think with Bruno, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think people probably underplay a little bit versus what I think in my mind. That's just how I feel in terms of what I see, and in terms of the people talking about, is that I think people still probably underplay a little bit just how much better I think Bruno probably is now than he was, because of the change, because of what's happening. Like, obviously we're a much better team, but that, the difference between the kind of number 10 thing, I mean, a lot of people were going Bruno and going against Haaland earlier in the season, and I did at least once, or maybe twice, and it went well, I think, or at least one of them, I can't remember now, but when he was defensive midfielder for an Amorim team, and like DEFCON was one of the serious avenues to points kind of thing. And I remember that one week, and I never felt great about that. There was this whole thing still talking about, like, well, Bruno, would average more points based on some hypothetical situation, or like from last season, based on the the added DEFCON or whatever in that deeper position, all this sort of stuff. Whereas I was like, I never felt great about it. I never felt. There was that week when a lot of people went against Haaland when he was playing Fulham. And that was one of those weird weeks where I was like nowhere near that. I was just all over Haaland, feel really good about him because Haaland is Haaland, does, for various reasons, but also didn't feel that fantastic about Bruno. Like, it was taking a lot because he's a defensive midfielder in an Amorim team still, no matter what. So I don't think people fully appreciate necessarily, like, we're talking about Bruno Fernandes here, and he's gone from being a defensive midfielder in an Amorim team to basically being put in a position, the number 10, high up the pitch, and being told, right, I just want you to get goals and assists. That's all Bruno Fernandes' job now. Is probably the best creator in Europe, a total output merchant, and a phenomenal player with great players around him. His only job now is to do what we want him to do, goals and assists. So it's really quite difficult to see him going through a game, especially at Old Trafford and against better opposition. It's difficult to see him going through a game without doing something. And then it's combined with the fact that there is a bit of an EO decision there for me, to be honest. I still expect the fact that Bruno be quite a lot lower than Haaland. So I like it. I think if I was going into this week now and I thought, for example, Haaland was going to be 80% effective ownership and Bruno Fernandes was going to be 160, 170, I'd probably captain Haaland because it is pretty close and Haaland's amazing. And I do expect Haaland to do well. But the fact that I expect Bruno to have probably half his ownership still, I'm pretty comfortable on Bruno at the moment.
Yeah.
How about you, Harry? So there's a lot of interest in your jack of potatoes in the chat, but I will ask you instead for your captaincy as things stand.
I do apologize. I put some mustard and oil in the oven to put my carrots in when I went back, and I left it too long and it had all gone a bit burnt. So I had to take that out and get a new pan. So that's why it took slightly longer than expected. This is what you don't see with a nice polished edited video. What really goes on behind the scenes when I'm trying to make dinner at the same time.
Wondering whether you might, do one of those kind of second channel, a bit like Andy Let's Talk, doing his sort of walking and that sort of thing. You could do a cooking sort of side hustle.
Yeah, I could do. What cooking whilst trying to record a video? That's what it's going to be, and what I burn along the way. No, in terms of captaincy, at the moment it's on Haaland. But I agree. I think as it gets closer, I think Bruno will become more and more appealing. I think there is still a little bit of uncertainty, although we know where Bruno's going to play. We don't quite know how it will work against a team like Fulham. And I think the fixtures that they've had have played into United's hands a little bit, particularly that Manchester City fixture where he was so good. I will see how it goes tonight. No Foden again for City. So is Pep finding a new way of playing without Foden in there? I'll keep an eye on how it goes. I think tonight Haaland has currently got it, just because a bit like you spoke about earlier on, Danny, when people went against Haaland, I didn't really, and I tend to have come out of that pretty well. That I'm pretty happy owning all of these other players, but maybe I'm looking at it with a couple of red arrows on the bounce and thinking that Bruno might be a good opportunity, like you say, to do something a little bit different. But I have to admit, I normally look at it the other way, if I'm honest, and it's same as the reasoning that we gave for Saka being basically the opposite. That I often don't want to put myself in a position of risk, and captaining against Haaland against a Spurs team who might be without Van de Ven and feel like they're on the ropes more than Fulham are is not something I particularly love the idea of.
Yeah, that's true. They've got a lot of injuries at the back, haven't they? They've got, what is it? No Porro, no Van de Ven, is it?
Although I'm not sure no Porro particularly is anything from a defensive point of view, because they'll just play Jed Spence there, who's probably better defensively than Porro. But yes, no Van de Ven I think would be a big thing.
Tonight is actually quite big as well. Obviously they need to perform. I think whatever they need to win. It's a big game. So yeah, I didn't realize that Foden was playing. I'm just looking at the team now. So Cherky, Bernardo Silva, Marmoush, and Doku with O'Reilly in the sixth.
Yep.
So that is going to be interesting. Like if they win 3 or 4-0 tonight and Haaland gets 2 or 3,
yeah,
that's then very interesting.
Cool. I think we should push on to the wildcard question earlier. We've got a bit of a draft to talk through here, and then we'll move on to our team. So maybe if we just take about 10 minutes over this one, and then we'll move on. But I mean, Danny, do you want to read it out for the audio? Actually, Danny, this is a not necessarily suggested wildcard draft. It's just one to talk through some options.
Yeah,
for
no, it isn't.
those,
so I wanted to say that before anyone switches off or kicks off or throws something in the screen. I mean, what I was doing, I knew it would be useful just to discuss, because it just as a function, to facilitate talking about certain players. But I was trying to. This is one of the reasons why I'm not wildcarding again, because what I wanted to say earlier is, I talked last week about what's the opportunity. Do I feel really good about the opportunity? But the other massive question for me, and you sort of touched on it earlier, Harry, and this is always so important for me about wildcards, is clarity. How do I? Because I like to feel just really clear and 100% about the team, about picks, about players, about what I think, and I just don't have any clarity at the moment in terms of what I think about how to pick a team. And I was trying to throw something together just quickly before the pod, and I was really struggling. And I thought, right, you know what? I'll go on review and have a look at a bit of an optimal team, see what review thinks for a 12-week optimal wildcard, and then I can sort of outsource it and say it wasn't mine. And we can talk about it anyway. And then I just changed a little bit, so it's not quite review optimal. So this is basically, and I will read it out in a second. It did have Collins in there instead, and it had Alderete in there. You'll be pleased to know, Rich. So I quickly corrected that. But it's quite interesting what it threw out. And again, this is kind of why I don't want a wildcard at the moment. But it's got Raya in goal. It's currently got there Maguire, which is an interesting thing to talk about. Fulham at home. Gabriel, Van Disney, Anderson, Van Dijk. That is, I don't know why I say that. Someone said it once and it just made me laugh. Van Dijk, Anderson, Enzo, Mbuemo, Fernandes, Saka, Evan Nilsson, and Haaland up front. Mukiele first sub, Anderson and Mane. And I think you've chopped off the top. I can't remember how much is in the bank there for me, but a little bit in the bank.
0.8, sorry.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, so as I say, this was kind of a review optimal team. And you can see there, like, some of the big things, like what a wildcard means this week. Like, for example, it suddenly means it's optimal, for example, to have Raya, going into a potential Arsenal double and then a likely Arsenal blank in 31 and it being easier to maneuver him in and out and so on. Obviously, it's got Van Dijk, which I thought I'd leave in there because I just think it's quite interesting discussion point, especially if they change the manager. He becomes, again, an opportunity. Like, if Liverpool got Alonso with those fixtures, if that happens, if they switch managers, I will really quite like having Van Dijk, to be honest, again. I feel pretty good about that. But I guess we should just start quickly and we'll talk about it I was thinking we'd talk from the start. We've already talked a lot about strikers, but can you see what I mean there? I mean, what I don't like generally about wildcards and about right now is I don't like planning in transfers, really. So someone like Thiago, I'm not sure how I feel about just starting without him. I hate that sort of thing where I'm going, right, well, am I going to start without someone who I definitely want in like 3 weeks? I'm probably going to lose value on. I think he's one of the best picks in the game. I think if he stays fit, he's just a lock. That's how I view it at the moment. That can easily change. But I view him as just a lock till game week 38. Like, he's that good. And I'll happily play him in any fixture. And apart from really the Arsenal game that's coming up, the other ones are like, I'm okay with it. So I hate that immediately when I've got a front line where it's like, right, I'm wildcarded into something where I've actually got a little thing in my head sticking there, buzzing away, knowing that I've got to make this transfer. And transfers are so important. I don't like that. For one thing, it's got Evan Nilsson in because it's optimal because the fixtures. I'm not really wild about Evan Nilsson. So then there's question marks. Watkins, if he was there, question marks. We talked about Ekitike already. I kind of low key like the Ekitike thing. Like you said though, Rich, this basically plans in the Saka switch. So it also interestingly, obviously, keeps Saka, goes for that opportunity. Still think Saka's the best, by the way, over the double game weeks on all models. It will do, and kind of understandably so. So you're keeping that Saka for the double game week, and then almost invariably you're transferring him out. So it is planned transfers, and so it does make sense to plan those transfers with the wild card now. So you almost have to, and we're all kind of booking that transfer anyway, especially as Saka owners. We're going to do it anyway, except we're going to keep our wild card. And as soon as you sell Saka, the nice thing about it for all of us who aren't using a wild card is it usually turns one player into two. We're not turning Saka into another really expensive player, are we? So like you said, Rich, it's more likely the Mane there or the Gui or whoever we've got as a third striker who doesn't even play, turning into someone like potentially Ekitike, potentially Watkins in 27, potentially back to Thiago, whatever it is. The picks look better then. And then you can still turn Saka into whatever it is, a Tavernier or a Dewsbury Hall and Jai or any of these cheap guys that we didn't really talk about before. So it's still the same in the wildcard. That doesn't really change. And then, just kind of looking briefly across some of the others. I mean, what I do like when I look at the wildcard is I think about who's a lock anyway. Who would I definitely lock in where it doesn't even matter when I'm wildcarding? Like, I feel really good about those players. Obviously, Fernandes is one. If I was wildcarding, I would definitely have Mbuemo at the moment. Obviously, that could be another United attacker next week, but right now it'd be Mbuemo. I'd definitely have Enzo. So that 3 across the middle is like, that would be there. I'd definitely have Gabriel, of course. And then the nice thing about some of the other ones, like I'd definitely have Anderson as well. I miss Anderson, the Fulham Anderson, I mean. He's just looks fantastic long term. I think you've both got him. I don't have many more. I can't remember what happened there, but I don't have many more. So he'd be a lock as well. And then someone like Mukiele, I haven't really thought about defenders enough yet, but Mukiele I think is pretty difficult to just not have. I mean, the guy just seems to get points every single fixture somehow or another. He either gets a clean sheet or an assist or a goal or DEFCON. I mean, is he even capable of blanking? And he's still 4.5. So yeah, I mean, and it's got Anderson there. I mean, Anderson is, again, it's such a funny one, isn't it? Again, Forest Anderson. I don't know what to make of him either. I kind of, every week I kind of should have bought Anderson, really. Every single week in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I should have bought Anderson and didn't, because I'm like, can I just find something else? But the guy just keeps churning out points for fun. I think he is a really good pick, a really good value pick, and he does allow stuff. I mean, I also wouldn't play him there, by the way. I'd play Mukiele if I was playing that team, and that was just kind of to discuss the formation and to show the team. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit to talk about there. But do you see what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm just like, I can kind of get to a lot of those players that I want to lock in anyway, like the Fernandes and the Mbuemo and the Gabriel and, you know, and Haaland. And I also want to say, sorry, quickly, when I was thinking about opportunities, so where it did go back up slightly for me in terms of thinking about the Wildcard 24 and who I don't have, because Enzo was one of them, I do really like Semenyo. I think I would want to find a way, to be honest, at the moment. I know it's a gamble. But he looks, well, then again, he's not played tonight. So that might change things. I don't know what's happened. Oh, no, he can't play tonight.
He can't play.
I forgot. So, yeah, so I mean, Semenyo looks very repeatable to me at the moment. I mean, he just looks very, very confident. He's super fit. He's so good at finishing. He's just already taking it on both shoulders and he's just scoring every game. Pep's talked loads about wanting that type of player, about wanting that type of winger. I don't think they've really got anyone else who can do what he does. And of course, that might not last long. He could only be 4 or 5 weeks and then he's had a few bad games and then he's out. But I think I'd be willing to take the risk with someone like that because it feels so repeatable. I'd feel really good with Semenyo in my team versus playing someone like an Njai or even Anderson or a lot of these cheaper guys, even Rodgers. If I was going into a game right now with Semenyo, I'd be like, oh. The only downside is that he's so highly owned. But all those guys who are like engaged and the kind of a lot of the Twitter folk and content creators and all, and we kind of logically sold Semenyo a few weeks ago when he was getting sold or whatever and going to miss some games. We're all the guys who don't own him. So yeah, so I don't know where do you want to start or what do you want to mention there?
Well, yeah, we just have a quick run through. I mean, there's a couple of issues just to pick some things up with the draft there. If you were starting with this is kind of what I was saying earlier. I really like the idea that in 27, for example, dropping Saka to say a Shada and then a striker. It could be a third striker in that setup to Thiago. And I do see a lot of teams starting with a sort of 4-5-1 style structure with on wildcards still. I'm still not down with that. I know that strikers look a bit moment, but I still don't like it. I think there's an opportunity there I'd still be sticking at least with one mid-price one.
Yeah,
I think that's quite a risky approach myself. There's no guarantees with what the 4-5s would look like in 31, and you are going to need them to play in that blank game week and all that kind of stuff. So personally, I don't like that at all. But good luck to you if you try it. What do you think, Harry? Is there anything you wanted to pick out with Danny's comments? Like I say, it's more of a comment draft rather than should be your team. Blah blah blah.
No, I think it's pretty much got the structure that most people would go with. I think whether you go with Saka or not is quite a big piece of it because, as you say, if you don't go with Saka and you had Rice in that, then suddenly you could start with Thiago over Mane. And I think the reasoning on Mane that you could keep him for the double and then move him, I think is fine, but I just don't expect very much from him. I'd rather start with someone else in there. But again, that means upgrading him to Thiago or going creepy, which again comes with its downfalls. But it is pretty close to the draft that I've built this week. I've joked over the past month or so about David Raya as a pick. I understand his benefit with the double that you can just sort of bench him. But as someone who's not got him, I'm quite happy not to have him. And even I know his clean sheet potential will be high, but part of me would rather not. I know they've got the double, so you'd want triple Arsenal. But after that, I'd rather have pretty much anyone else in there. And I think Timber's upside. I think if either of those attacking returns at the weekend had gone down as a Timber goal or a Timber assist for the second one, I think he'd be in it. So that's probably the only thing I'd probably change would be not to have Raya. But again, it does help you once 31 rolls around.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally. Like again, that's why I want to emphasize. Like this, I turned this into a bit of the kind of the review one, because when I was putting something together, I never had Raya in there, and I wouldn't, and I don't even care about the the sort of the bonus of being able to turn it around. I just don't think that means enough. Like you can get it's so funny actually, the idea that lots of us have kind of hated owning Raya all season, then we wildcard into Raya. I mean, as if, because as soon as you wildcard, you've got until game week 38. So then you're going to game week 38 with Raya, and it's just not going to happen. And yeah, like I was the same. I was just like Timber and Gabriel, but then the keepers is so difficult to choose, because this is the other thing we would mention, by the way. Thinking about keepers, obviously, so much then rests on the double game week. And obviously, there's things like you could have Sanchez and Jose Sa, for example, to guarantee a double in 26. But you don't, I mean, how do you feel about it for the rest of the season? It's difficult to say. I mean, then, you've got Sanchez for 4 fixtures, then it gets a bit iffy. I mean,
Dubravka would be a lock on mine, partly because in 34, they play City. So the chance of them having a double in 33 is then very high as a result. And although they don't keep loads of clean sheets, like we've seen over the past couple of weeks, I just think he's such good value. And
this is it, about the double. I mean, I'm at the moment, so for example, take my team as a reference. I've got Njai and Tarkowski. Now, I believe that the odds on like Solio, for example, are only something like 10%. They have it down as the Chelsea double in 26 instead. At Everton. I mean, that's 3-2, that game, isn't it? That, obviously, it's unlikely, but there's a very real chance that it's actually Everton and Chelsea that double in 26 if a double's going to happen. I mean,
but we'd have to also finish in the top 8 of the Champions League, which is why it's so low.
Right. And okay.
We're away at Napoli tonight. So, I mean, things will become clearer after tonight. If we finish in the top 8, that will probably go up.
So there's an outside chance of it anyway, which makes things quite interesting in terms of having Everton players and having Chelsea players, and of course gaining more information again by not wildcarding. We're thinking about those goalkeepers. So yeah, the goalkeepers would be really difficult to choose. I wouldn't want to wildcard into Raya really. I'm just too against it now. There's just so many points you can get from goalkeepers. Just to mention on what you said about some of the other picks in terms of like throwing it together at the start, Saka being Rice, you can easily have there, by the way, like for example, Evan Nilsson is Thiago, Saka is Rice, and Anderson is Semenyo, which is interesting in terms of like possibilities and like it looking like a good team. It feels a little bit inflexible not having the price point of Saka and you sort of then like ruling out that bigger price point. If it's not easy to get to an Ekitike if Liverpool suddenly look brilliant, or Watkins or something like that. But we'll get to the double and Arsenal double, and it will just be Rice who probably does better because he's done better all season. So yeah. Anyway, I don't think there's a huge amount to say really about it, other than the fact that, like we say, we just don't know. There's so many I don't knows here, which is why I don't want to wildcard.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. I'm going to skip past the actual games this week, if that's okay, and go to our teams. Just a little bit of a nod there to the Solio Rob. Those. And you'll see, I guess, the standout ones this week: Chelsea on 2.18 projected goals. What was it? I'm trying to remember now. Actually, I can't see it because something's blocking my view. But Sunderland being top defense this week kind of made me, as someone who owns Alderete, don't joke. I'm not enjoying that at all. So yeah, that's the thing. And obviously, Man City numbers pretty good. Come
on, Burnley. Come on, Burnley.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they do tend to dig it out and score somehow, strangely enough. But yeah, we'll go to our teams because I know that Harry has a Chelsea game to watch shortly. So let's have a look at his team. Harry, do you mind doing the standard thing of reading out for audio, and we'll just talk through your decisions?
Yes, I've got Verbruggen, Tarkowski, Richards, Gabriel. In the screenshot, I'm starting Dorgu as well, so I can have my Saka auto sub because Saka doesn't deserve to be in my starting 11 the way that he's performing at the moment. But Bruno, Anderson, Rice, Saka midfield with Haaland, Thiago, Ekitike, Dewsbury Hall, and then Anderson of Fulham on my bench. It doesn't feel great this week, but with only one transfer and only 500,000 in the bank, there's not really much I feel like I can actually do with just one transfer. So I'm probably going to end up rolling. I quite fancy playing Dewsbury Hall, but I've got Verbruggen in goal. So playing one against the other again, and it would be deciding which of my front 8 I'd bench, which would probably be Thiago away at Aston Villa. So that's about the only decision, and I'm just going to hope that Ekitike and Saka are finally worth their money, I think. Haaland does currently have the armband as well, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, cool. We'll see how things pan out tonight. Any critical feedback there, Danny?
No, I hope that Harry gets some well overdue luck, actually, looking at his team, because we both own Tarkowski, we both own a Palace defender, we both own Saka, so please don't sell him. And and Thiago, and but what did you say you were doing? What transfer or rolling? Did you say rolling?
Yeah.
That is incredible level patience. Watching everyone wildcard this week.
I
making
wish
big moves to kind of swing things around and get expensive midfielders in.
The thing is, if I had more than one transfer, I'd almost certainly be making 2 moves. But the issue I've got is, in order to make a move that I actually want, I need to downgrade someone. So I can't really do it with one transfer. That's the issue with the situation that I'm in. So having 2 transfers or 3 over the next couple of weeks feels better than, because like the only moves I'd really consider this week would be, I mean, I honestly don't even know what I would do. If I had to come up with a transfer this week with only 1 and 0.5 in the bank, it would be downgrading Ekitike. But again, we've spoken about that, and I'm not enamored by any of the forwards in his position. So I just don't see there's any obvious move if I'm only making 1 this week.
If you didn't think he, or I don't know, to a lesser extent Saka would start, would you take a kind of just a bit of a one-off, sort your team out hit to get midfielders that you like? Because I've seen a few people this week. I think on the Wire, for example, they were a little bit more -4 heavy this week because they were just wanting to set up their midfields for the next sort of 3 or 4 game weeks, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so like I could do Saka to Mbuemo, and then interestingly it would probably be Dewsbury Hall that went, even though I've just bought him to Enzo or something like that. But I've just got to hold patient on Saka, and I don't think that Dewsbury Hall is that much of a worse pick than all the other players who are 2 million more than him.
He's a great pick, I think. I mean, as long as he sort of gets his fitness back quickly. I mean, he came on at half time, didn't he, on Monday?
Did, yeah. So you're probably going to expect he starts away at Brighton. I suppose his mins this week are probably not quite up at 90, which probably means he is the right one to bench. But from then on afterwards, they've got, I think, Bournemouth at home a couple of weeks after that, Fulham as well. So I think his data is basically identical to Rodgers, and he's 2.5 million cheaper than him. Just what I hope, I guess. Yeah.
He's a brilliant pick. I mean, just thinking back, he was the reason that a lot started to go wrong for me, actually, when it was going well, because I just before the 5 free transfers to switch my whole team around and get Saka in and whatever it was, like I was so confident in Dewsbury Hall. That was the week I brought him in with 3 transfers, and then he immediately got injured. With him injured, my whole team sort of collapsed because it was all built around him. But yeah, that's because I was so confident in him because he was that good. I was kind of happy to play nearly every game at that point. But yeah.
All right, let's see. Danny's up next. If you don't mind doing the readout for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I've made a transfer. I mean, you know me, I love to roll. I will read the team out. But unfortunately, I own Anthony Gordon, which makes things difficult. I genuinely don't mind. Again, on paper, like I don't mind the fixture at all for Gordon this week, and he probably will score now that I finally got him. This is the sort of game at least he actually tries in. He actually turns up in. He'll probably try and score a goal, or he'll probably try and run into the opposition half, or pass the ball forwards at some point in the game. So I don't actually mind it against Liverpool. You know, he loves that sort of game. But anyway, he's gone. So Raya in goal, Tarkowski, Gabriel, Lacroix, Van Dijk, Njai, Mbuemo, Fernandes, Saka, Thiago, Haaland, and then Hall for sub. So I did Gordon to Mbuemo, and I did it early because it was. I mean, I think I had 0.2 wiggle room, and then the following day it would have been 0, and then the following day it would have been like I don't know, it might have been -0.1 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And with all the future moves that I've sort of got looking at, everything was so tight, and obviously United only playing once a week, and I just thought, right, I'll just do that, and I've always got the wild card there anyway, just in case or whatever. But yeah, I was confident enough. I am a bit fearful of not having Enzo. I'm not wild about Njai, but Njai is just the reason. Njai is a good pick. It's just that he's a fantastic footballer, and kind of goals just happen to him, or they just happen as a byproduct of him being an incredible player. He's not a volume guy. He doesn't make things happen all the time. One of the reasons I got him in as well, though, was kind of partly a little bit, just a tiny little 5% or less, was because of the Grealish injury and obviously him going to the left. And I really thought, because when Grealish was playing for Everton, he had the license. He was the one player that Moyes was basically saying, you just stay up there and hold the width, actually be our release to get the ball to. And, and I was thinking, surely he's going to tell Njai, don't come back so much right now, be the release, do what Grealish did, but in his better position. I was kind of hopeful on that, and it might still happen. I think he is better on the left. He is an incredible player. I didn't actually watch Monday because I couldn't bring myself to, because I'd had such a shocking week. It was too depressing. I saw that he had 0.53 or something expected goal involvements, which is not bad. He's obviously on penalties and he's a very good penalty taker. So you just never know with Njai. You just have to leave him be. And Brighton away is the sort of game that you can see Everton just randomly getting a 1-0 winning and, Pickford getting a 14-point or something, but it'll more likely be 1-1 or something. But yeah, so feel confident enough to go for Mbuemo now. I'm quite happy with that. It's nice to have two pieces of the pie. Likely captain Bruno Fernandes, but we'll see what happens with City. Don't know how to feel about Palace, because I was sort of feeling better about them, a little bit better, because I was sort of saying surely they'll just be a little bit more settled now, because the manager pretty much, as far as I can see, knows he's just going to be staying there. It's just a kind of case of just get on with it. They've got Munoz back, they've got Sarr back. And then even against Chelsea, watching the first 30 minutes, I was thinking, I'd bench Lacroix, and honestly, I was thinking, I don't know how Chelsea are going to score here today, because I really felt because Palace they are so solid. And there was a moment where Lacroix cleared the ball away from one of the wingers and just pushed him off the pitch, and was then celebrating in front of the crowd, going, "Come on!" And I thought, "Oh, that's quite a good sign," And then they sort of, and I think it did take that sort of almost a bit of a wonder goal from Estevao to break that game. There's definitely a bit of game state that ended up with that scoreline being what it was.
Yeah.
So I think they're quite hard to read, because Forest are obviously not great. It's the sort of game normally that Palace would really thrive in, a team that's not very good at attacking, a Dyche type team. Palace just eat that up. Obviously, they don't have Gay. That is a blow. I do think Camvo's very good, and Lacroix's brilliant, and Richards is good, and so on and so on. They don't have Wharton, though, this weekend as well, because he got suspended, which was really annoying at the end of that game, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's just one of them. Again, another one, just roll it out, see what happens. I kind of expect Liverpool to be a bit better at home and against Newcastle, who have not been a great attacking team either, but I'm not really hopeful. So again, it's just a kind of, it's a 4-4-2, not hugely hopeful, but at the same time, it's funny. Last thing I'll say quickly, there's so much variation in our teams at the moment. When I was looking at live FPL last week, and you get the little dices or whatever on all the players that are low ownership, I must have had about seven die.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah.
And it's because there were so many players less than 10% ownership, and you're like, wow, there's so much opportunity here. And I think it'll be similar this week. Van Dijk, Lacroix, Tarkowski's low, and Njai very low. And Mbuemo and Fernandes won't be low, but they won't be close to a kind of 100. So I would have liked to roll, but I think I needed to get some.
No, yeah, definitely. No, you can't be hanging around with the worst person in the world. And he is. Although I liked his little interview before the UCL game, actually, where he was talking about the state of the Premier League football and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that was quite good. Yeah. But anyway, we'll move on from that. The good thing for you is, I'm sure Harry's noticed that Danny's got 5 very robust defenders there, which is I'm very envious of having, because I own, and I'll switch, Michael Keane and Omar Alderete. Thanks, mate. Anyway, but I'll read out the team. I've tried to keep an open mind so that I can receive critical feedback tonight on this, because there's a few different routes here. But anyway, the team is Mad Bob Sanchez, Timber, Gabriel. I'm not worried about Timber, by the way. I know that a few people are concerned about that. It just feels like such an obvious rest to me. But we'll see. Anyway, Timber, Gabriel, Alderete in midfield, Elliot Anderson, Bruno Fernandes, Foden still in the shot there because I benched him at the weekend. Harry Wilson, star player. Saka, Ekitike, and Haaland. Captaincy's on Bruno, and then the bench is Dubravka, Anderson, Keane, who goodness knows what's going to happen there. And then the dud spot with Mark Gui. Yeah, so it's an odd one, this one, because so my defense is not as robust as yours, Danny. That's for sure. I actually don't like Alderete after this week. I don't think he's particularly useful in almost any game up until the blank. Actually, and the blank is against Newcastle away as well. But so that's a bit tricky. But Keane, I've no idea what's going to happen. But I think you just have to wait at least a week, don't you, to see what happens there, because he might play, in which case. He's got a couple of okay fixtures. He's got Burnley coming up in a couple of weeks, I think. Bournemouth at home's not awful, I suppose. So I think you have to hang on to him there.
Best finisher at the club.
Say again.
Best finisher at the club, apparently.
Best finisher at the club, yeah.
I think exactly. Barry's got 4 and 5 now from about 1 XP, doesn't he?
Barry and Michael Keane just having a shootout at training every game. Just like, who's the best?
So it's a funny one, this one, because like a lot of teams I've seen this week, you know, there's an argument for just plug in, pretty much just fix one problem and so on, or there's to be kind of a little bit more aggressive and try and get a few transfers ahead again. Because I think, Danny, you mentioned it a few weeks ago, but some of the teams aren't wildcard. You kind of feel at the moment, even though you can carry on, you're always a transfer or two behind where you wanted to be. And I feel like this squad is one of those that it's serviceable, but it's a couple of transfers behind where I intended to be because of things like Cherky. That diversion was a terrible idea, clearly. Minte, obviously, all that kind of stuff about a month back as well. So it's just a bit behind. So if I do one transfer, for example, it seems quite obvious that it would be Foden to Enzo or Mbuemo. Yeah, that would be obvious. And if I decided, I might have done it on Sunday. If I wanted to be hyper aggressive and set myself up because I've got issues that I think will come up down the line, Keane seems likely to be a sell at some point. I don't want to play Alderete and so on and so forth. Wilson has a couple of dud fixtures here and there. If I wanted to be aggressive, I'd actually make 3 transfers and take a hit. So it's an interesting one, this one. I'll see what you think about this. But if I did that, I would go Foden and one of the cheaper midfielders to Enzo and Mbuemo, and I would take Ekitike down to, it could just be Thiago to set me up for the long term because I want him anyway, and or it could be Evan Nilsson. He's probably the second favourite or thereabout, so I don't mind that because of course the Saka downgrade gets me my third striker later on. So those are the 2 options I'm looking at, and I want to make a decision on it tonight actually, so no pressure. But any thoughts, Harry? I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I think a team, you might think you're a couple of transfers behind. I think it looks in pretty good stead, if I'm honest. I think a Foden replacement and keeping your transfers is almost certainly what I do. Because you never know. Here, like if we get to middle of next week and like there was a big turnaround in the cup, you'd much rather have those transfers than 1 week of all those players you're considering bringing in.
Yes, I've got 2 actually. I should have mentioned that at the start. I've got 2 transfers.
Yeah. So if you took a hit this week and suddenly Arsenal got knocked out of the cup by Chelsea and suddenly you wanted to do something completely different, I don't think the players that you're bringing in for a hit are so much better than that information that you might get next midweek. Okay, and you know, the provisional announcement of a double might come this week, but you might need to wait till next week. I just don't think this is the week, and I know you're saying that people have spoken about the hit, but I think there's a lot. It's unlikely, but there's a lot that could change next week that could impact your thinking. Like if we got to next week and suddenly Arsenal didn't double, then Saka out would probably be the transfer that you'd make instead. So I just think that as much as you might look at that, I don't think you would need to be selling Wilson. Wilson's a player that I'd love to own, even with the fixtures. Anderson, I think, is fine. And Ekitike, I think the Foden transfer is all I do.
Yeah. So I can afford Mbuemo in 1 for what it's worth there. It's that mind-boggling thing where everyone else has that lucky situation where they can have both this week and I get to pick 1, and whoever I don't get, I probably won't own, blah, 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 going forward, that sort of thing. Danny, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just agree 100%. I'd just do the Foden move, and I don't think hardly anyone's having both. If you mean Mbuemo and Enzo, like you must just be looking at select teams because most people.
No, well, yeah, no, I could see your point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would definitely just do. I would just definitely do that move. I mean, Foden could have been nice, but obviously he's not played tonight, so that looks really bad now.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. It's really too difficult. So the on that, I mean, I think between the two, I'm just a Bryan guy. That's the problem. As much as Enzo, I know I could easily smash. I know the logical thing, by the way, to do here, if I'm just being objective, I think the logical thing to do is to buy Enzo. And then next week, I've got the 2 free transfers. I could take down Ekitike that week, and then I can pop up one of the Anderson to Bryan then. But I'm not going to do that because I love Bryan. So this is the problem. We can all be as logical as we like, but unfortunately, I'm flaky and I love Bryan. So this is the problem. What are you going to do? Anyway, pop in any chat comments if you want to tell us some thoughts on our teams, but there we go. Anyway, we've kept you a long time, Harry. I want to let you go so you can find out whether basically Enzo's going to score a couple tonight, and I'll completely flip on that decision and take the hit immediately. But what can you? I think Foden's dropping tonight, by the way. So this is one of the reasons why I'm keen to, because I'm losing everything here.
Arsenal 1-1 already against a team I've never heard of after 5 minutes.
Conceded a penalty.
Did they?
Is it Kairat? Kairat? Something like
that. But Baker's just messaged and said that Spurs scored a goal and it's been disallowed, and nobody in the stadium knows why it's been disallowed. It's quite funny.
Oh yeah, we don't start on your VAR rants. We've already seen your tweets this week about people not enjoying goals anymore and all the rest of it. So we'll leave that to debate to X. Harry, I wanted to thank you very, very much for joining us this evening, and it's lovely to have your company. And I hope you feel slightly better about your team. Maybe you don't.
Anyone to tell me that I don't need to wildcard? No, but thank you for having me. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and I hope it won't be the last time.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do it again in the future. And actually, yes, and do make sure you head over to Harry's channel because he's got some really good new stuff going on. The preview videos that have just started, that sort of thing. Anyway, go and enjoy your jacket potato, and hopefully a Chelsea win for you. Although it pains me to say that, as you know, I'm a West Ham fan, sadly. But we can swallow that one. But yes, thanks for everyone joining us in the chat. Please do scare. We could do that. Share and subscribe. And thank you for your company this evening, and good luck for the weekend.
Cheers, boys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.